there are so many opportunities beyond the traditional physician track. Some of these avenues are more tried and true. Some of them are more creative, right? So nowadays, a lot of people are interested in creating social media followings because there is so much upside. It's not just the fun and, building a community, and whatever little sponsorships or partnerships or monetization you can do, which in the grand scheme of things, for most people would be very small compared to their physician salary, right? But it's about creating optionality. So when you have a personal brand through your YouTube, your Instagram, your TikTok, and so on, your website, then both professional and personal opportunities will come to you that otherwise never would have come. Things like friendships, right? Actually, these are some things that are even beyond just career. One of my favorite things to do for years now is my car channel. I'm a huge car nut. I love driving. I love going to the racetrack. I love all these things. I leveraged my Med School Insiders YouTube brand, right? Which at the time I think was maybe like 1.3, 1.5 million, something like that in terms of subscriber count. And I then reached out to some of the car reviewers that I admired. And these were other YouTubers who had anywhere from 50,000 to maybe 500,000 subscribers. And I said, hey, my name's Kevin. I do this other channel and it's not related to cars, but I'm also a huge car nut and I want to start my own car channel. And I talked to these guys and some, many of them are actually still really close friends. And I asked them like, what made you take me seriously? He's like, dude, I had so many guys sliding into my DMs. Like they're all like so many dudes. And the thing that stuck out is like, yeah, you had this other channel that was a lot larger than mine. So I figured that even if you didn't know much about car YouTube, you at least knew about YouTube to build a different brand. So I wanted to learn from you and like it could be a mutual win-win. And that's just an example of a personal benefit from having a brand, right? There are other things in terms of like investment opportunities, job opportunities, various things that can come your way. I would say for those who, if you already know what you want to do, if you're like pretty set on a certain path in terms of I want to do medical devices or gonna go to McKinsey and do consulting, like the very tried and true path that many people, even before social media, were doing. Totally valid and seek out those opportunities. But if you are more wondering what else is out there and you don't have anything set in stone just yet, and you say, well, I'm open to other things, but I'm not quite sure what's there, then I think creating a personal brand is going to be a huge step forward. That's going to open up doors for you and give you, when you do have greater clarity, you're going to have more of that dry powder to then execute on it. And we're building this platform, this community, so that the med students, the residents, the attendings can build those personal brands and get a lot of these benefits. So for those who are interested, it's at physicianincomeaccelerator.com. And it's not launched yet, but I've had many calls with a lot of the interested med students and residents and some attendings as well. And it's something that is clearly a point of pain for a lot of people, and I'm excited to help them, just like based on my lessons starting a few different companies and starting a few different brands. Not to say that I'm the number one world expert, but like I've done this in a way that aligns with my goals, with my priorities, and I'm very happy with how things have turned out and where they're heading, and just want to share some of those insights with the medical community. High leverage habit or mindset. So the mindset is going to be get rid of the idea that you're good or bad at certain things. Instead, adapt that mindset to say you don't know or you're not proficient at doing X, Y, or Z yet. Big distinction. One says I am the kind of person that is bad at math. One says that I am the kind of person that is not good at math yet. Now, the reason this is so important, even though it sounds a little bit woo-woo, is because for you to now get better at math, there would be cognitive dissonance where you are contradicting yourself. You're like, wait, I'm the person who's bad at math. Why am I trying so hard here? Why am I working to improve on this math skill, right? So that's the mindset. The habit, it's boring, right? These habits that actually move the needle, people don't like to talk about it because it's the same stuff. But it's the same stuff for a reason. These things really do matter. And the one thing that I've been refocusing on, my earliest videos were oftentimes focused on some of these habits like sleep, exercise, nutrition, the 3 pillars that I believe are mission critical if you want to be a top performer. But with sleep, I would sometimes let my curiosity and other factors in life allow a little bit too much wiggle room on sleep. And long story short, I did a sleep study, and there's going to be a whole video on this. I did a sleep study, like a home polysomnogram, like a PSG, versus various consumer grade sleep trackers, which is coming out on my Kevin Jubbal MD YouTube channel later this year. I was working with a sleep doctor when doing this, and he said a lot of these things are really good, but wow, your consistency is pretty trash. So your window, I want to see the window 1 hour or less in terms of when you sleep and when you wake. And your window is sometimes 3 to even 4 hours. There's days when I'm sleeping at 9:30. There's days when I'm really excited at 1 a.m. Like, I will sometimes get excited by some work stuff, and I'll be coding and building some new tool. And next thing I know, it's like midnight. I'm like, ooh, I'm almost done though. Let me just keep going. And I don't exercise that discipline to say, hey, you got to put this away. You can work on this tomorrow. Because now the next day, with the sleep being compromised, your energy is all out of whack. The thing that a lot of us don't appreciate with the sleep is the consistency. So for me, and I think for many people, it's going to bed and waking up at consistent times. Why does that matter? If you are sleeping 8 hours every single night, but sometimes you're sleeping at 2 a.m. and sometimes you're sleeping at 10 p.m., then I think all of us will over-index on the quantity of hours, but we don't understand the quality of those hours. The quality of your sleep and the amount of time you're spending in each of those sleep stages, right? Your your REM, etc., your light stages, your deep stages, that will actually be out of whack. Because in the first half of your sleep versus the second half of your sleep, you're actually going through different percentages of each of these stages. So I would rather sleep a little bit less. I'd rather sleep 7 hours every night, but sleep and wake consistently, 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. Let's say that's 7 hours, versus sleeping 8 hours, more sleep, but sometimes sleeping at 9 p.m., sometimes sleeping at 3 a.m., sometimes sleeping at midnight, and all over the place. It's because I know that I'm going to feel way better in the former rather than the latter. So when we talk about prioritizing sleep, I think a lot of us focus on just the hours of sleep. And I think some of us have focused on the sleep hygiene, like not overstimulating yourself right before you sleep, not having caffeine, dimming the lights, making a quiet, cool bedroom, dark blackout curtains, etc., etc. Those things are very basic. We can all talk about that. But the hardest thing behaviorally is just sleeping and waking up at the same time. Great question. I think a lot of us have a fear of judgment from others. And when you zoom out and you think about what's the worst that's going to happen, if there is some negative judgment, are you going to be ostracized and outcast by the tribe? Are you going to actually starve in hunter-gatherer times? Or is that just a remnant from your evolutionary ancestors, right? So I think that puts things into perspective. And whenever you do receive feedback, even if it's negative, you want to win from the situation, right? So how do you win? Well, if you can extract value, no matter how that feedback was provided. So if someone says something in a very distasteful way, rather than having the knee-jerk response of saying, well, this was mean, I didn't like this, I'm going to reject it, can you instead approach it through the lens of, is there any truth to what they're saying that I can learn from and become better from? So that's how I think you can essentially filter through the criticism and determine where the value comes in, right? So if someone says, wow, your audio is totally trash, I can't even bear listening to you, I'm turning this stuff off, stop making YouTube videos. What you should hear is like, oh, how's my audio sounding? Like, should I actually change that? Versus being like, this guy's so mean, I'm gonna delete his comment and yada yada yada. Like extract the value. I was very secretive about my inflammatory bowel disease. I have been given some feedback. So first of all, when I applied to med school, I was not secretive about it. And I believe that it was obviously a very large motivator for me to want to become a doctor and become a pediatric gastroenterologist. I remember a terrible, horrible interview that I should have reported at Vanderbilt, where the person was grilling me and saying, like, for an hour, but it was an hour-long faculty interview with this dinosaur who just was not, it was just very unprofessional and very unpleasant. The whole interview was like, dude, you can't become a doctor, you can't get into med school, you can't go through this process, you have a condition, you won't be able to do it. And that was like the whole theme of the entire hour. It was very distasteful. Based on that and some other experiences, I was like, I need to not disclose this. And throughout med school, very, very few people knew. When I was applying to residency, of course, it was never discussed at all because that's just a liability. So it was like this secret. And I eventually shared it. Like after I was in residency, I was like, well, I guess now I don't need to keep it a secret. And actually the reason why was there was this book from this football player, former quarterback, I think, who wrote a whole book about his experience. And I was like, wow, I feel so motivated and energized, and seeing other people do these big things in their life gives me hope that I can do big things in my life, even though I may sometimes feel limited by this condition. And it hit me. I was like, well, isn't it kind of selfish for me to be extracting that value from someone else? But then I have the ability to also provide some kind of value to some student who wants to get into med school, or, you know, whatever kind of value I can provide them to be like, hey, you can do this too. And yet I'm not sharing that. And that bothered me. So very shortly after, I created a video on YouTube explaining, hey, like, this is my secret. I didn't really share this with many people. Here's why, but like, here's what I've learned. It's a terrible condition, and would not recommend, right? Would not recommend, but you want to extract the value from that condition. And I remember after making that video, talking about my experience and what I had learned and my recommendations and what had helped me, and et cetera, et cetera. I got this message from this one other guy who was like, first of all, there were a lot of people who in the comments who had said, you know, I also have IBD, or I have this other chronic condition. And it was great to see that community and see the value that was there, right? In terms of us sharing our experiences and having that community. Loved that. But there's this one guy that really sticks out to me to this day. He sent me this really long email, and he's like,
Kevin, I think we're the same person.
I was like, wait, what? This is kind of creepy. And he goes through, so I've done a lot of research across certain like surgical databases and surfing injuries, and like there's a few patterns, right? He was like, Kevin, first of all, I have IBD. I'm trying to go into plastics. I'm doing research right now. Every time I try to do a research study, I search for the idea to see if like the study's already been done, and your damn name shows up every time. And I was like, dude, this is wild. So we had a very nice exchange, and it actually reminds me, I wanna touch base with him again. He's probably an attending physician now. There was so much value in being authentic about that experience, and even to this day, like even last week, I got a message from someone on Instagram DM saying, hey, I'm starting med school, I'm really scared, and I'm excited, but like, how did you manage? And I just sent them a note saying like, well, look, like, you're gonna get through it. Here are the things that helped me. These are the things I wish I did differently. Again, for going back to the earlier in the interview, I think that helping others selfishly makes you feel better. It makes you feel happier. So yeah, when I feel like I'm helping people with their IBD or their other chronic condition and there's some value, it makes me feel happy. And I like that. Going back to those 3 boring pillars of sleep, nutrition, exercise, one that I've been doing recently is exercising first thing in the morning, which I wasn't doing. I used to exercise, like go to the gym, strength training in the afternoons, but more recently I realized my calendars just get more and more packed and it gets pushed. So I sleep earlier, wake up earlier, and now I hit the gym every day around 6 or 6:30. It's just such a good way to start the day with positive momentum. And since we're talking about exercise, let me just also add that we're all so busy. In modern day, you're rarely going to find someone who says, oh, I have so much time, unless they're like retired or have some very unique situation. You have to make time for these things, and there are ways to reduce the overall penalty on the rest of your day. So what do I mean by that? I think that before, when I used to not go to the gym, I would have a morning routine that included a 20 to 25 minute walk. I no longer do that. And then the walks were nice. Like, you go outside, the sun is just about rising, and like I'm journaling and all this stuff. But I was like, I need to, especially right now this year, there's a lot of growth happening at the business, and I'm working longer hours. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna compromise and sacrifice my morning walks with journaling. That's okay. I'm gonna now take that gym time, put it here. The other thing is cardio, because a lot of us, especially young guys, we care so much about strength training, building muscle mass, hypertrophy, and we don't really focus on cardiovascular health. But I'm like, you know, since I was, 20s, I realized that I wanted to make cycling a regular part of my routine as well. But I'm just too busy now to go take my bike, drive someplace, ride around the trail, and then come back. That takes multiple hours. So what I do now is I have an indoor trainer, and I will do meetings with my team, or I will do other types of work that don't require a lot of like input, but more, you know, like some YouTube related stuff that I can do on the bike, or do some meetings on the bike. So I have to do those things regardless. I would normally be sitting at my desk sitting here doing that work, but I can do it on the bike and do some zone 2 training, or once a week do that higher intensity training. So it's the boring stuff, but I prioritize these things because they matter. And when these things are not dialed in, I feel the difference, and I feel the mood slip, or I feel the energy wane. So that morning strength training at the gym, and then it's actually 5 times a week, sometimes 6 times a week, of the cycling on indoor trainer are my non-negotiables. There's a lot happening at Med School Insiders this year, and I can't give away too much, but already for those who've been watching the channel, you'll see that the videos themselves are quite different. They are sometimes incorporating some live action. The animations are slightly more, I guess I just encourage the viewer to take a look at the new MSI videos, which we're excited about. We have a new Med School Insiders Blueprint channel as well, which is actually live action, meaning that I'm sitting on camera talking, getting a little bit more nitty gritty, because there are certain topics that, just aren't broad enough for the bigger Med School Insiders audience, but getting really nitty gritty about so pre-med specifically, what do you need to know about choosing a specialty, and do you actually need to choose a specialty at this point? Or should you take a gap year? And getting to the nitty gritty and talking about the frameworks, because we go pretty deep. And I think that inside Med School Insiders, we have these protocols, these discussions, these strategies that help us be far more effective at what we do. And the idea with Med School Insiders Blueprint is to give the audience a sneak peek into some of the mindsets that we have and some of these strategies and these frameworks, because I think when you go really deep into something, you actually have greater appreciation and more fun. So essentially we're showing a lot of the nerdiness that we have in Med School Insiders, where we obsess over how many schools should a student apply to maximize their odds of getting to med school, which is very different from the generic, just apply to 15 to 20. And we're like, well, no, we actually think that's highly suboptimal, and here's why. So getting very nitty gritty there. And for the students that want to work with us, there's also quite a few differences in terms of the experience. So a lot happening this year that, again, is one of those years that, like talking earlier, I need to exercise the discipline to go to sleep on time, because there's a lot of stuff happening, get very excited about these things. And then that creative energy, if you don't tame it, then next thing you know, you're in bed and you can't fall asleep because you're just excited thinking about things. So it's 2026 is going to be a very exciting year for Med School Insiders. And with the car brand, for those who are interested in cars, there's some really exciting cars that are very rare, very special, very unique, that I just filmed 2 weeks ago in Seattle. Have some other ones coming up that I just filmed last week at the racetrack. So for those who are interested in cars, Jubbal Cars is going to have some bangers soon too. I think remembering that life is now would be helpful, because we can sometimes not appreciate the moment until we look back on it with nostalgia. San Diego is where I went to med school, and it's still what I consider my happy place. Whenever I go there, there's just good vibes. And I know that when I lived there for the first several months, maybe even the first year, I was like, wow, this place is incredible. But at a certain point, I'm like, oh yeah, this amazing weather, that's just kind of the norm. And oh yeah, these amazing beaches that I drive past, that's just kind of the norm. I think that I was actually decent, because I still had I had a journaling practice and stuff at that time, which wasn't always the most consistent, depending on, month to month. But I think that reminding yourself to enjoy the moment, because it's not that when you get to the next stage, then you'll be happy, right? It's that life is now. There's not something different about next year or the year after that completely transforms your experience. It's about finding the happiness and the appreciation in the moment. And I think that would just further enrich the experience. I already look back at my med school days as some of my favorite years. It was my second chance at college, because college was a bit of a shit show for me in terms of a lot of personal health, just family, all these things colliding, a lot of stress. And I took all that, I sublimated, I took all that negative energy and put it into academics and things like that. But then in med school, I was able to enjoy myself more. And there was a lot of intensity in med school, but I think at times I kind of was too focused on the next stage rather than savoring the moment. And now, again, in hindsight, you look back to when I was studying with Dr. Amit Pandey in the anatomy lab, bumping some hip hop music at 10 p.m., preparing for our lab practical. And those are the moments that I cherish those memories. They were so much fun. And, I had fun in the moment too, but again, there's going to be glimpses, and there's going to be moments for each of us as students where we're just stressed about a test, or we're focused on the next thing, and we we don't really appreciate that sunset as much as we should. I don't think it's because of anything that I don't think it's because of the success. I think it's because of your internal state. So when you start feeling momentum, you build that confidence, right? So I've always been against the whole fake it till you make it, because I think that leads to imposter syndrome. I'm not quite as eloquent as Alex Hormozy, but I think Alex Hormozy says, build a stack of evidence that like proves who you are and is undeniable.
Do so much work, it would be unreasonable for you not to be successful.
I was saying something kind of similar several years before he even showed up on YouTube, which was, you don't fake it till you make it. You essentially, you do the hard work and then you prove it to yourself that you are made of what you say you are.
So they say you can fake it till you make it, which isn't necessarily the worst way of doing things, but I don't think it's always the best, because you open up the possibility of imposter syndrome and things like that. Whereas if you build confidence from taking small risks and overcoming small obstacles, and then taking slightly larger risks with slightly larger obstacles, you keep building from there, you're going to have a much more sustainable way of building your confidence. You're going to have a much more accurate assessment of where your confidence level should be, rather than being way overconfident or way underconfident, because you're just faking it until you make it, in which case it's kind of hard to calibrate. So those are the two reasons I think this is the best approach.
I think I definitely, in my early to mid 20s, especially after getting IBD, man, I was so, dude, I was 6'1", 130 pounds, like, when I was at my sickest. Like, I was not looking healthy, I was not feeling healthy, and I, got back on my feet and I gained some weight, and I was consistent at the gym, even in college, after getting sick. But I never really there's always like this feeling of like, I'm not quite where I want to be in terms of my fitness. And I'm not quite where I want to be in terms of my doing well in school, but like, I'm not in med school yet. Okay, now I'm in med school, I'm not a doctor yet, etc. And I think that for me, there was a lot of this sense of lack, or like this, I felt unsure of myself a lot, and I doubted myself a lot. Okay, so here's an example. I did well in the MCAT, right? So according to, like, if you convert my old score to the new score, it was like a 525, right? And I, of course, felt really good about it. But I was like, oh, but I'm definitely not as good as those kids from high school. Those kids were really smart. And I was, still friends with one of those really smart kids from high school. And I chatted with him and we got the same score. And I was like, oh shit. Wait, why was I always like downplaying myself? Like, why do I feel this inadequacy, or I feel like I'm lesser than? And the funny thing was that there's like these two really smart kids that like everyone would joke, hey, these kids are gonna cure cancer. I was like, Kevin, like what? Like I remember sitting down once and like journaling on this. I was like, dude, why do you like this is so like illogical. You have this like this feel like you feel like you need to prove yourself and that you're not enough. So you lack this confidence. And then I remember that the kid who I got the same score as, he and I went through this like math competition. We got past the first stage in high school. This other kid who was like gonna solve cancer, right? The other genius kid in our class, he actually didn't even get past the first stage. So I was like better than him at math, but I still felt like, oh, he must have just been unlucky. Like I would create these like mental things that I think some of us just take more work to get past our own insecurities. And when I started having more success with like Blue Link or the YouTube channel or plastics or med school or whatever, then I slowly started becoming more confident and less quiet. I was a very shy kid, as an example, like painfully shy when I was younger. And I think some of that energy still came through when I was in high school and college and even early med school, right? Like shyness usually comes from some level of like, okay, people are watching me, I don't want to mess up. Like there's some insecurity. I do think that, yes, to answer your question, people start treating you differently, but it's not because they're like, oh, wow, you have some success and that's great. It's like, no, you then become the different person that now is more confident in yourself, and all the subtle cues from your posture to your eye contact to how you communicate, those things now come across in a very different light. So I think that and it's also then becomes a positive feedback loop, because the more you start getting confident in one area, the more it gives you success in other areas. Like I remember my dating life in college was abysmal. And then my dating prospects later on, like med school, were a lot better. And I was like, oh, is it because I'm a med student? And I was like, well, maybe, but I think it's actually just because I'm a different person now. I'm a lot more mature. I'm a lot more certain of myself, and I still acknowledge I have these limitations and these weaknesses, but I don't feel lesser than because of those weaknesses and because of those limitations. Whereas like we all have our own weaknesses and limitations, and I'm not worth less as a human. I don't have to prove myself. And I think that comes across. So then, yeah, when it came to these other endeavors, that flywheel just spins faster and faster, and things get easier and easier. It's like an investment in yourself, right? So I guess I'm also really grateful for, my parents when I was a kid. They were like, your education is number one. I was always like, what do you guys mean, dude? It's just like school. Like, we all just go to school. What do you mean education is most important? I didn't really get it until I was a lot older. And in my 20s, as an example, and especially when I started, these other side businesses, I've bought thousands and thousands of dollars of courses just to elevate my own game, right? Because that is what, like, education is everything for your future. And I think as a kid or college student or whatever, like, yeah, whatever, like, we're all in college, like, yeah, you're gonna, like, it's education, it's not a big deal. And investing in yourself is the number one thing. Because when you think about it logically, right, it's like, well, I can take $1,000 and I can put it into this course or this program or this mentorship that can increase my skill set, and that increased skill set is going to result in a different trajectory for the rest of my life professionally. Or I can take the $1,000 and put it into the S&P. And then in 7 years, I'm going to have $2,000 because with the rule of 72, 72 divided by average rate of returns, 10%, pre-inflation, I'm going to double my money every 7 years roughly. So, okay, $1,000 to $2,000. Yay. It's like, well, you could have had like 1,000 to a million, but now you're settling for 1,000 to 2,000. 1,000 to 2,000 is still like, you've doubled your money, but when you compare it, it's a lot less.